Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Classic X-Men #1, cover dated September 1986. So the idea behind the Classic X-Men series was to reprint issues of the all new, all different X-Men, starting with Giant Size X-Men from 1975 all the way forward, because those issues were hard to come by as back issues and also were expensive too. Including the early issues of the Claremont and Cockrum run and the John Byrne and Chris Claremont run as well. So this was a way of making available to readers in the mid-1980s classic stories that were continually referenced in Chris Claremont's ongoing run on the Uncanny X-Men and associated spin-off titles. Now the cover here is by Arthur Adams. So we've got 13 X-Men on this cover squeezed in there, some of them very small figures indeed, such as Banshee and Sunfire there in the background. It's a pretty excellent composition, I think, and obviously because he spent so much time working on the figures themselves, he's left the background blank, and I think that that's a way to help the figures pop on this particular cover too. Now, as I said, this is a reprint of Giant Size X-Men #1 back in 1991 with the launch of Adjectiveless X-Men #1, the best-selling comics title or single issue in the world. There also was the publication of facsimile editions of the likes of X-Men #1 from 1963, as well as Giant Size X-Men #1 from 1975. The cover here famously the background figures of the original X-Men drawn by Dave Cockrum and the new all different X-Men bursting through the cover, so to speak, drawn by Gil Kane. I've always thought it curious that Cyclops there is one of the original X-Men, aghast at the arrival of who else except for himself there, because he is the leader of the all new, all different X-Men, electing to stay on under the tutorship of the Professor and help guide these new X-Men to live out the Professor's dream of peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. Now, what's intriguing about the classic X-Men reprint is that it does not reprint all of Giant Size X-Men #1. Instead, it reprints only 13 pages from the 32 pages of Giant Size X-Men, X-Men story, featuring the new team versus the sentient island and malevolent island Krakoa. But let's open this one up and we'll get a little bit more into that. So here we have the inside cover credits page. Two classic tales of the Uncanny X-Men. Writers Chris Claremont, pages 1 to 4 and 18 to 32. And then Len Wein credited for the 13 pages from Giant Size X-Men #1. Now, when I did a little bit of research about Giant Size X-Men #1, Chris Claremont provided a plot assist to Len Wein that is uncredited in Giant Size X-Men. So Claremont is all over the pages in this particular issue. The artist credited here are John Bolton for the bookending story material, which is brand new. That's pages 1 to 4 and 18 to 32. Dave Cockrum is responsible for pages 5 to 17 from Giant Size X-Men #1. He did pencils and inks on that. The lettering on the new pages are by Tom Orzechowski, and the lettering on the old pages, the reprinted pages, are by John Costanza. But Glynis Oliver is the colorist throughout, as she was on Giant Size X-Men #1. And there we have a really cool spot image of the all new, all different X-Men by Arthur Adams. This one is dated the 20th of March 1986. Looks excellent, particularly Storm there. And let's get into the story. So, but before we do, I'll just show you how Giant Size X-Men opens. It opens with a splash page, the credits there as well, and the grandeur and the glory begin anew with Second Genesis. And then we get into the story starting in Winseldorf, Germany, and the introduction of Nightcrawler. So how does the classic X-Men begin? It begins with the new material by Claremont and Bolton. The title of the story is First Night, Professor Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters on a sunny spring morning when one era ends and another begins. And it's Cyclops rushing into the professor's study. His eyes are open, but his optic blasts are quieted, and he exclaims, "Professor, I'm back." And the professor responds in shock, "Cyclops, this is a most unique institution with most unique students, among whom is Scott Summers, perhaps more widely known as the leader of the X-Men, Cyclops." So let's turn the page. We see the professor there at his desk. He's got computers there in the background, papers in front of him. "Where are the others?" he asks. "What happened to the X-Men?" And then telepathically he says to Scott, "Open your mind to me, lad. That will be more efficient than you're telling me verbally." And so we get a montage of everything that happened in respect of the X-Men being attacked, and Cyclops, or rather Havoc here, telling them, "Quick, everybody scatter, get moving before we..." Cyclops never saw what hit him. His next recollection was waking aboard the X-Men Stratojet alone, its controls locked on course for home. Moreover, his deadly optic blasts were no more. However hard he tried, he could not fire them. So that's his present condition when he arrives into Professor X's office. But then the optic blasts come back, and of course he's traumatized by that. "No, not again. Don't let it happen again." And the professor says the obvious: "Your optic powers have returned with a vengeance." So the professor helps put a blindfold around Scott's eyes. "Careful, Scott. Keep your eyes closed while I bind them tight. Thank goodness your body's impervious to the beam's force. Your optic blasts have somehow been amplified to a considerable degree. I'll have to modify your ruby quartz visor to contain them." But Cyclops is concerned about the X-Men. And the professor says, "One problem at a time, my boy. You get yourself well. Let me worry about the rest." So he dons Cerebro, and he thinks to himself, "This is the moment I knew would come someday, and in a way, long dreaded. My mutant detector Cerebro has located those I sought. Once I summon them, though, nothing will ever be the same again for the X-Men and the school, for better or worse." Now remember, Claremont is writing this from the vantage point of 1986, and he knows what the next decade of stories after Giant Size X-Men contained, because of course he wrote them. So it's intriguing that he gets to go back and write this retroactive continuity, this unseen to this point moment when the professor finds where the new X-Men are in the world, and then he makes his visits to them. But first, we see him keeping an eye on Cyclops as he trains with the new visor. "Is something bothering you, lad?" he asks Cyclops. "What do you think?" responds Cyclops. "I believe my nightmare was over, that miraculously my eyes were healed and I should live a normal life. I should have known better." And the professor says, "Yes, you should have. I wish I could walk. You cannot conceive of how I hate my wheelchair, of how I envy you X-Men. I cope, I endure because I must. Yielding to the alternative, despair, self-pity, is unthinkable." So that's like the best version of the professor. He's a practitioner of tough love. He tells his young charges truths about how to succeed and flourish in the world, that it requires grit, determination, that it can't involve despair and self-pity. And that's something I think the younger generation in 2025, 50 years after Giant Size X-Men #1, it's a valid message for them. Maybe more so in 2025 than it was for children back in 1975 and 1986. Anyway, what does Cyclops say? He apologizes. He gets the point. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just that sometimes I feel so lost, so scared. I wonder what I am without the X-Men. They're my family, and the thoughts of losing them, that's worse than growing up an orphan and never having one. At least then I didn't know what I was missing." So the professor is more conciliatory. He says, "I understand. There exists within him such a fundamental sense of betrayal," he says to him, or he thinks to himself, "that walks hand in hand with a subconscious certainty that he will always be abandoned by those he loves." Again, think of the prescience there and the irony in respect of how Cyclops, from the vantage point of 1986, would be abandoned by Jean Grey, apparently, when she kills herself in the blue area of the moon in Uncanny X-Men 137, and Cyclops takes a leave of absence from the team. It's all packed in there, dramatically ironically, into the Professor's thoughts. And Cyclops responds, "Professor, the X-Men are still in danger. When do we start the rescue mission?" And the Professor responds, again, 1980s craft technique here, the color hold, the magenta color hold for the Professor's telepathically projected face. He says telepathically, psionically to Scott, "First, I had to get you back in shape, Cyclops. Now comes the next step. Over the years, I've been establishing a roster of candidates for a backup team. I intend summoning them." And the Cyclops asks, "Is that a smart idea, bringing total strangers into the school?" Which will be explored after we get through the reprint pages. The wisdom of bringing total strangers into the school and how they might gel or otherwise with the original 5 members of the X-Men. And the Professor says, under the circumstances, have we an alternative? So necessity demands that he go out and now finally recruit as the new, all new X-Men, these international mutants from around the world, starting in Winseldorf, Germany, nestled deep in the Bavarian Alps. The tiny village has hardly changed over the centuries. In Winseldorf, life is gentle, peaceful, except there's an angry mob and they're going after Nightcrawler because he looks like a demon. "At least if I die, it will be as a man," he thinks to himself as he climbs up the outside wall of this house. And there he is perched atop the roof, and he's telling the mob with their burning brands, "Go away, you fools, I've done nothing." Really great art there by Dave Cockrum. Let's turn the page here. And they're firing those brands up on the roof, setting fire to it in order to kill Nightcrawler. And he thinks, "And for what reason is this happening? I came among them only to learn, yet all I've learned thus far are the ways of blind, unreasoning violence. Well, if that is all that those who dwell in the normal world have to teach me, I'll show them that I learn my lessons well." So he's going to go down fighting. And then this guy here is going to bring the stake. They're going to drive a stake through his heart as if he's like a vampire demon. And then, psionically, there's a command, an imperative, "Stop." And remarkably, they do. Who is it? It's Professor X. And he has calmed them with his telepathic powers. He introduces himself and he says to Nightcrawler, "I heard you say you'd come here to learn, my friend." Now remember, he thought that, so the Professor was telepathically eavesdropping on Nightcrawler's thoughts. And he says to Nightcrawler, "I'm a teacher. I run a school for gifted youngsters such as you, a school for mutants." So Nightcrawler's intrigued. Mutant? Yes, I've heard the word. And the Professor reveals to him, "You are a mutant, Kurt. I can help you find your true potential." And Nightcrawler turns and asks, "Can you help me be normal?" "After tonight's misfortune," replies the Professor Kurt, "would you truly want to be?" And here he says, "Perhaps not. I want only to be a whole Kurt Wagner. If you can make me that, teacher, I will go with you." So Nightcrawler's the first to be recruited into the new team, the rescue team. And he gets 3 pages here. And that's because, of course, Nightcrawler was Dave Cockrum's favorite of the all different X-Men. So he gives him that starring role on the first 3 pages of the story. And then next up, we have an established character that is Wolverine, of course, whose first appearance is Incredible Hulk 180, a cameo at the end, and then full first appearance 181. And that dated to 1974, if I'm not mistaken. And the scene switches to Quebec, Canada. Few people know of this secluded military installation. Fewer still know of its true purpose. So Wolverine has someone waiting for him in the conference room, and he enters, and who is it? He says, he asks, "And who's this bigwig you want me to meet?" And the Professor introduces himself. "I am the bigwig, Wolverine." And of course, there's kind of a humor there, maybe unintentional because the Professor's bald. But in any case, he says, "Professor Charles Xavier at your service." And Wolverine, typical of his attitude, "Am I supposed to be impressed?" And the general here says, apparently the top brass is impressed, Wolverine. All I know is that the professor is here to make you some sort of offer. An offer, eh? Replies Wolverine. Okay, Prof, you've piqued my curiosity. What's the deal? Professor says he'll come straight to the point. I know of your recent battle with the Hulk, and moreover, I know of your powers. You, my friend, are a mutant, and I have need of mutants, desperate need. But what about my position here? Asks Wolverine. And the professor says, I'm offering you a chance to become a free agent, a chance to learn to put your powers to their greatest use. And, you know, that persuades Wolverine, which is intriguing. Shakes the professor's hands and he says, a chance to get out from under the red tape and rigmarole, eh? All right, Professor, you've found your man. So the general there is not impressed. He says, the government has invested a great deal of time and money turning you into what you are now. You try walking out on us and I'll have you locked up. Wolverine pops a claw. It seems you didn't get my meaning, friend. This is still a free country, isn't it? He slashes the guy's tie off. So I'm resigning my commission effective immediately, unless, of course, you've any further objections. I didn't think so. And then the general here says, believe me, mister, you haven't heard the last of this. Anytime you want me, you know where to come looking, says Wolverine. And they do come looking for him ultimately in the form of Alpha Flight. So next up for recruitment to the rescue team is Banshee. And this is kind of funny stuff. He only gets 2 panels here because he's an established character going all the way back to X-Men number 28. Nashville, Tennessee, a visitor to the Grand Ole Opry finds he has a visitor of his own. And then we get this stage Irish dialogue. Remember, it's Len Wein's. Begorra, 'tis Professor X himself now. Nobody talks like that in Ireland. And the professor says, Banshee, I must talk with you. So all of the talk happens between panels, and Banshee basically agrees. So that's it. That's the story, is it? Then sure, and I'll help you, Professor. 'Twill be nice to tread the straight and narrow for a change, because of course Banshee has a checkered history. As someone who was an outlaw for a while and also worked on the side of the law, so checkered indeed. And then the scene shifts to Kenya, Africa, and we're introduced to Storm, and she is living her life as a goddess to the people there, where she brings the rains. And then of course she too has a visitor, a most impressive display, Ororo, truly beautiful. And she's taken by surprise. Who are you? What business have you in Ororo's land? And he introduces himself and he says, and I've come to make you an offer I pray you will not refuse. And she's dismissive and offer, what have you to offer a goddess? By the way, fantastic art here, pencils and inks by Dave Cockrum, really great stuff. Let's turn the page. What's the professor's pitch to Storm? He says, you have a land, Ororo, and people who adore you. I offer you a world and people who may fear you and hate you, but people who need you nonetheless. The world I offer is not beautiful, but it is real, far more real than the fantasy you're living now. So that gets her interest. He continues his speech. You're no goddess, Ororo. You're a mutant and you have responsibilities. Come with me, child, taste the world outside. You may find its flavor bitter or surprisingly sweet. So she responds, you present a most peculiar argument, yet I sense a deep sincerity in your words. All right, I'll come with you. Perhaps the time has come for me to leave the nest at last. Then he goes to Osaka, Japan, and he makes his pitch to Sunfire, and Sunfire agrees to it. But he agrees in an arrogant fashion. I owe you nothing, Professor, but perhaps I owe something to myself. Perhaps it is time once more for the world to hear from Sunfire. And then the scene switches to Siberia and the farm, the collective farm that Peter Rasputin's parents work. And Peter's out in the field. There's a tractor running out of control towards his little sister Ileana, and then we get a look at his mutant power. The very air around him crackling with the energy of his exertion, energy released in a most astonishing manner. The armoured machine bears relentlessly down upon the unwitting child as an armoured colossus snatches her from its path. and he stands his ground as the rampant tractor plunges towards him. So who's going to come off better in this? The tractor or Colossus? Let's turn the page. It's Colossus, of course. And then there's a voice in his head. And moments later, Peter responds, you want me to go to America with you? And this is interesting. He's speaking English here rather than translated from the Russian. But anyway, he continues and says, but if I possess such powers, you say, does it not belong to the state? Because, of course, Colossus was born into communist USSR, a totalitarian state. And the professor responds, power such as yours belongs to the world, Peter, to be used for the good of all. And believe me, your powers are needed. So he goes to his parents, asks them, what should he do? And his father says, do as your heart tells you, my son, I will not betray you. And that's interesting because, of course, it means that the father isn't going to inform on the son to the KGB or any communist state agents, because that's the kind of thing that went on in the USSR. So they're good people, and his mother's there crying, and he says, I must go, Papa, then it is right that you do. So farewell. And then the scene switches to Camp Verde, Arizona. John Proudstar does not like the reservation. He does not like to watch the old ones sitting slumped against their doorsteps, dreaming dreams of glory long gone. John Proudstar is an Apache, and he's ashamed of his people. That's quite the introduction to Thunderbird. Great spotting of blacks there as well on the mountain, and the twisted branches of the tree there in the foreground as Proudstar goes after the bison, and he pulls it down. Really well illustrated by Cockrum. Great stuff. And he says aloud to the bison, there, horned one, do you see? There is still a man among the Apache. Let's turn the page. And then, of course, he's got a visitor in the form of Professor X. And he's astounded. How in blazes did a cripple get way out here? Not that it matters much. You've got 5 seconds to vamoose. White eyes, I don't want company, especially yours. Don't be too hasty, my young friend, says the professor. I've come to help you fulfill your dream, to give pride back to your people. You're special, John Proudstar. You're a mutant and you're needed. And John responds, and you can stuff a cactus, Custer. The white man needs me. That's tough. I owe him nothing but the grief he's given my people. Now beat it. So he's walking away, but he stops because the professor keeps talking persuasively. I offer you a chance to help the world, and you turn your back on me. Then perhaps what they say is true. Perhaps the Apache are all frightened, selfish children. So the professor there, gambling on the fact that he might strike a nerve with Proudstar and he might get him to do exactly what he wants. Okay, that does it, he says. Ain't nobody that calls me a coward, mister. I'm as good as the next guy. Heck, I'm better. You give me a chance, I'll prove it. So the professor's persuaded him, and you will have your chance, John, I promise you that. But he has to think to himself, but will any of my new X-Men be equal to the task that lies before you? Or will you carry the world down into ruin? So dramatic. Now, I want to mention something here because I was recently rewatching. I rewatched this movie Predator 1987, the John McTiernan one with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers and the rest. And the actor, I'm trying to remember, is Sonny Landham, who plays the character Billy. Isn't he the spitting image of John Proudstar? I mean, isn't that who you would want in that era? 1987's Sonny Landham, Billy in Predator to play John Proudstar. Just a perfect match, right? And now back into the reprint business, and you can see here that what happened after this scene, right, there it is we shift to chapter 2 at the X-Mansion, and Cyclops comes out, and there's some dialogue, and then they're in the Blackbird, and they're heading off to Krakoa, okay? So that's what happened in Giant Size X-Men number 1, but we get all of that sped up here in the next couple of pages by John Bolton. Salem Center, New York. The school seems a modern-day Tower of Babel at first, but a telepathic crash course in the English language closes that communication gap in minutes. So now everybody's speaking English. We've got the all new, all different X-Men there, And Cyclops says, the X-Men have disappeared, Thunderbird. It's our job to find them and the mutant responsible and deal with him. So we've got the original X-Men up there, plus Polaris and Havoc. And within hours, the Stratojet has retraced its flight halfway around the globe. The new X-Men split into teams and begin their search. It's soon rewarded. From the moment they land, they're under constant attack by the island's flora and fauna. Only after freeing the captive X-Men do they discover that their foe, the mutant they sought, let's turn the page, great art here by Bolton, and more great art on the next couple of pages, is Krakoa. The entire island is a conscious and malevolent entity, a colony creature that sustains itself by draining the life essences, the special energies of other mutants. So a little bit like Sauron drains the life energies of mutants. That was why Cyclops had been released as bait, a Judas goat, to lure more victims into Krakoa's grasp. But the X-Men, old and new, proved more than its match as they combined their powers to hurl the island into deep space. And so battered, a little bloody, but victorious, our heroes set course for New York. And here they are. Sorry we don't have seats for everyone. The Stratojet wasn't designed to carry so many passengers. It's probably Cyclops speaking, which brings me to our next little problem. What are we going to do with 13 X-Men? And that's it for the reprint, right? So we don't get all of the reprint material, the whole business in Krakoa. Basically, Claremont is like, skip that, skip the action, skip. What he's interested in is the emotional fallout of having 13 X-Men in the X-Mansion, and the interrelationships and how these very different people are going to gel. And this is the title of the story, remember, on their first night together, all of them in the X-Mansion. So it was Angel asking the question. Angel's question is rhetorical, meant mostly in fun, but it weighs heavily on Charles Xavier's mind long into that fateful night. So this is really nice 3-point perspective, top-down angle on the X-Mansion, with the light there cast out on the front yard from the professor's office. The original team, he thinks to himself, were youngsters when we began, completely unversed in the use of their powers. My task then was as much to teach them those basics as mold them into an effective fighting force. These new X-Men are older with far more experience. They know what they can do. It will be a considerable challenge to integrate two such disparate groups. And then he starts scanning the mansion. I sense a great many thoughts. Everyone is still up despite the hour. I wonder how they're faring. Havoc and Polaris are clearing the dinner dishes and they're talking to each other. So what's the plan? And Havoc says, we stayed because we were needed. With this whole new crowd, we aren't anymore. Scott's the superhero in the family. I've other plans. So they kiss and embrace. And the professor, he's not a peeping Tom. Ahem, he coughs to himself. I've seen and heard enough. They both plan to return to school to complete their degrees. Excellent. And he's happy about that they're going to get on with their lives. But what of Cyclops? What of the first X-Man? He's upstairs with Jean Grey. And Jean says to him, Banshee's playing some wicked piano in the common room, lover. What say we join the party? Look at Cyclops, he's still in his uniform. I'd like to, Jean, really, but I want to finish my after action report on our encounter with Krakoa while the impressions are still fresh. Our victory was due as much to luck as skill. More importantly, I shouldn't have let you and the others be captured, let alone so easily. So Jean tries to comfort him. That wasn't your fault. But he responds, as leader, it's my responsibility to anticipate such threats and be ready to cope with them. Mistakes like that could get someone killed next time. So she kisses him on the cheek. Fine, but can't this wait? No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. She gets it. I see it can't. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. So very different interaction here between Jean and Scott. Uptight Scott, duty, conscious Scott, and his brother Polaris. So Jean goes out into the grounds of the professor's domain, But he won't, she thinks to herself. Never has, probably never will. He takes his job so seriously, as if it's the only meaningful thing in his life. I know it isn't. I'm a telepath. I've seen his thoughts. I know how much he loves me. It's just so hard for him to express it. But for us to truly be together and stay together, he'll have to learn. So Cyclops is going to have to change if he's going to have a girlfriend, and more than that in the future. And the professor thinks, poor Jean, I wish I could help, but in this matter it is not my place to interfere. So he's wise. And here is Banshee playing wicked piano in the common room. And he's interested in the fact that Peter's over there sketching on the sofa. He asks him, are you an artist? And Peter responds, I draw, but not very well. These are for my little sister Ileana, a record of my adventures. What are you playing, comrade Cassidy? I've never heard such music. So what is Banshee playing? He's playing, this laddie book is good old boogie woogie, classic roadhouse jazz. And the name is Sean. So that's interesting. I mean, like, you know, Banshee's power is his sonic scream, but he is a bit of a pianist. He's a bit of a musician, and he likes country and western, and he likes classic roadhouse jazz, and he knows how to have a bit of fun as he's smoking his pipe there and playing the tunes. But up in the shadows in the common room are a pair of demonic eyes. Not bad, mein Freund. Both Banshee's piano playing and your sketches. You should give yourself more credit. So Peter's shocked, and he instinctively transforms into his armoured form. And for shame, Herr Rasputin, says Nightcrawler. Is that any way to react to a teammate? What's the matter? Never seen a demon teleport from place to place before? So this is interesting, you know. Most readers in the 1980s know Nightcrawler as the fuzzy elf, as this fun-loving, swashbuckling X-Man, but in his original appearances, the demonic appearance was more played up, and we see here just exactly why it was that mob was after him in Bavaria. His appearance is unsettling. So Peter thinks to himself, another shirt ruined and my mother's not here to repair the damage or knit me a new one. Perhaps comrade Professor Xavier can provide me clothes that will not tear. And yes, he will be able to do that because, of course, Professor X is friends with Reed Richards, and he'll be able to get his hands on some of those costumes made from unstable molecules, and that should help you out. But this is interesting from Claremont. A character, I always have wondered, you know, what did Claremont make of Bobby Drake, Iceman? He never really did much with him, didn't include him in the X-Men so much, which always made me think that he wasn't interested in Bobby. But here we get a sense of why Bobby as a character did not gel with the all different X-Men. He's suspicious of them. Nightcrawler, or basically, he says here, regarding Nightcrawler's appearance, that he looks the part of a demon, and Banshee replies, aye Robert, but appearances can be deceiving, don't you know? And Bobby replies, good point. This wouldn't be the first time the X-Men have been conned by supposed friends who turn out to be enemies. And Nightcrawler there, juggling the empty beer bottle, says, we risked our lives to save yours, Iceman. Doesn't that earn us the benefit of the doubt? And Banshee says, pull up a chair, Robert, and join the fun. Kurt, toss him a bottle. I'm not old enough to drink. See the way he's just not gelling with them. And Peter asks, what's wrong, comrade? I'm not your comrade, Rusky. This is America. And Peter responds, I know where I am, Iceman, but suddenly I ask myself why I came. Are we not all X-Men? Glynis Oliver trope, red background. Iceman's not happy. He's losing his cool. You clowns figure you can waltz in and take over like the rest of us don't exist. I'm an X-Man, he exclaims, and so are Angel and Marvel Girl and Cyclops. Like our feelings, our opinions don't matter. So Banshee replies, we're not trying to take anyone's place, boyo. We want to belong as much as you. Don't we get a chance to prove ourselves? Or is your mind made up? You've seen what we look like and where we come from, and you don't like it, and that's it, eh? And Kurt says, that's a really great drawing of him sitting on the piano. I resemble a monster, therefore I am one. You object to Peter's government and condemn him by association. You're all for mutant rights, but only for those mutants who fit your aesthetic and political criteria. A most charitable attitude, Herr Drake. Most enlightened. That's great speech by Banshee and Nightcrawler. But Bobby's young. What is he, 17? That's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth. And Nightcrawler extends a hand. Then prove me wrong. Take my hand and Peter's and welcome us with an open heart. And of course, that's really interesting. The conjunction of his words about taking his open hand, but his open hand are the hands of a monster. And Bobby's not going to take that hand. And Peter says, it was a mistake to come. Will never be accepted. In the morning, I will return home. But Nightcrawler's got a pep talk for him. Our mutancy brands us as outcasts, Peter. Only you've been able to hide that fact. I've not been so fortunate. I've been this way from birth. But if we keep fleeing from those who fear us, if we race back to where we believe we're safe, you to your collective, me to der Jahrmarkt, nothing will ever change. Back to the Bavarian circus. I intend to stay, he says. And Banshee concurs, me too. Peter walks off, I'm not sure, but I shall try. He's got his doubts, he's worried, will he fit in? Really great stuff in these pages. And then what about John Proudstar? A man, he doesn't know it, but he'll be dead soon. The original team has some history, he thinks, a lot to be proud of. Won't be easy for them to share their place with a bunch of hotshot upstart outsiders, but to truly belong, as I once did to my tribe, to be brothers, the way the grunts were in my outfit during the war, that'd be worth, he was about to think, that'd be worth it. So he greets Iceman. This mansion is pretty big, he says. If you're not too busy, how's about sharing a few of its secrets? And Bobby just won't play ball. You want to explore, go right ahead, he says. Everything's labelled, you can't get lost, assuming you can read. So Thunderbird replies, no need for an attitude, hombre, just trying to be friendly. Iceman says, I'm not interested. Don't you understand, Buster? I don't want any of you here, not as X-Men. This is our house, our lives, you're horning in on. So, I mean, like, Bobby as youngest, it makes sense that he would have an emotional reaction to these new people in the house. You haven't the right, you don't belong. He attacks Thunderbird, but Thunderbird says, Professor Asta's Iceman, that gives us the right. We're here, we mean to stay. You can't handle that boy, that's your problem, as he flexes his way out of the ice. And Jean is aware of what's going on in the house. She's out there in the woods and by herself. Oh, Bobby, she thinks, people's minds are an open book to me, but knowledge doesn't always mean understanding. Everything's happening too fast, leaving us no time or opportunity to cope. A week ago, the original X-Men were the only X-Men. Tonight, we're outnumbered by a band of strangers. We're not unique anymore, perhaps no longer even needed. I wonder if that's bad. And look who's here. Smiling with a couple of beers and a cigarette in his mouth. Lady as lovely as you shouldn't ever frown, he says. What a charmer. So she's taken by surprise. You startle me. One of the things I do best, he says. He's sneaky. But she's wondering to herself, thinking, how'd he come so close without me spotting him? I wasn't even aware of his thoughts. He offers her a beer. No thank you, she says. Kind of man I am, darling. I know what I want the minute I lay eyes on it. And what Wolverine wants, he gets. Heart's pounding, Jeannie. You're breathing awful fast. Gives me the impression this feeling's mutual. And she says, hesitating, you're mistaken. Wanna bet, he says. Wolverine, no please, this is a mistake. Remember, Mr. Duty back up in his room writing his after action report, and here's a man of feeling, a man of hot blood, and Jean is. There's a part of her that's interesting. Of course, this is all in advance of Dark Phoenix and all of that in her future. And what about Storm? How's she getting on? Great pages here, great colours from Glynis Oliver. She does really well with these blues and greens and purples. They really convey the nighttime colours. The colours are different from any she's known, she thinks. There is a youth and vibrancy to this land that excites her. Africa's the cradle of life. America, the land humanity came to last. A new place, new experiences, new challenges. She knows there are risks and dangers, such as is always the case when one soars through unknown sky, but she does not care. And then she has an encounter with an angel, a goddess and an angel, in dialoguing in the air above the professor's domain. "Tell me, what's a gorgeous angel like you doing in a place like this?" asks Warren. "Should that not be my question, angel?" she replies, "since you are far more beautiful than I." "Forbear, gentle lady, I'll blush. I but state the obvious," she responds. "I hope I'm not intruding. I saw you take off and gambled. You wouldn't mind some company." So, it's typical Claremont. You've got these handsome and beautiful people in the X-Mansion. It's not all going to be Bobby Drake's kind of reaction. Some of them are going to hit on in the case of Wolverine, or try and court in the case of Warren Worthington III, the good-looking ladies on campus. So he says it's nice to have someone to share the sky with. Sometimes it's no fun soaring alone. And she responds, "I agree. It is sad your friend Iceman is not so generous." And Warren replies, "He's a kid. He doesn't appreciate the possibilities the way I do." "What possibilities?" she asks. "You, Storm, me, us, making beautiful music together, a symphony of motion and emotion." And Storm is, of course, a virgin. She replies, "I do not understand. It's something better explained," he says, "with deeds, not words, starting with a kiss." But she's gone. Or rather, no, it's not that. His attention is taken by a woman he previously had a little bit of a flame for in the original issues of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's X-Men. And he turns his head and says, "What the? I knew it. I knew that little lowlife roughneck creep was going to be trouble." "So what's wrong?" He says, "From what my eagle-keen eyes can see, sweets plenty, but nothing I can't handle." So he is swooping to the ground and he grabs Wolverine, who was hitting on Jean, and he says, "You heard the lady, shrimp, back off." So that's interesting. It gives one the sense that maybe Wolverine was pushing his wooing of Jean a little farther when Angel intervenes, or was it just the last we heard from him on, let's see here, this particular page. Is this the moment that Angel swoops down at? "You okay, Jean? Did the creep hurt you?" She replies, "Are you insane, Warren? We were just talking." Warren jealously says, "You keep your filthy hands to yourself, fella. She's spoken for, and even if she wasn't, she's too good for the likes of you." So here is Claremont giving us the origins of Wolverine's interest in Jean, which is not there in Giant Size X-Men #1 or in the first few issues of Uncanny X-Men 94 forwards written by Claremont. He's retroactively putting in that erotic frisson between the pair into the first night that Wolverine spent, all of the X-Men, the originals and the new, spent in the Professor's mansion. And so Jean gets in the middle of it with her telekinesis. A telekinetic push should keep them apart. And of course, I'm thinking also of Extinction Agenda, when the two of them went at each other with Cameron Hodges' manipulation. They've always had this rivalry, and it's a kind of a class rivalry as well. And here's Wolverine slashing at Angel. "You made me mad, Angel. Now pay the price." And Jean thinks, "He's going berserk. I can't hold him. Warren, take off. Get away." And then Storm intervenes. "This monsoon will cool their rage and their passions." And Angel says, that little guy's crazy. He tried to gut me with those claws. How in heaven's name could Professor X have brought a lunatic like that into the school? How can he expect us to work by his side? To trust him? He's as ready and willing to slaughter us as fight our foes. Again, that Glynis Oliver trope, red for violence and violent emotion. So the rain is pouring. Bolton does a very good job of conveying it. Look how sopping Warren's hair there. And Storm says, "You condemn easily, Angel, considering you struck the first blow." And he replies, "When somebody tries to kill me, lady, one chance is all they get." So Wolverine, he's regretful. He is also ashamed. Go away, Red. Let me be, he says. Angel there, no forgiveness. You heard him right, Jean. Take the runt at his word. You don't need the grief. And he replies, Flyby's right. I really am bad news, as crazy as they come. And he looks like a bedraggled animal there, and there's pain on his face. And of course, that's the part of him that feels shame about when he loses control. That is the part that is going to be key in his development in the coming decade of published comics. He says to her, I'm crazy as they come, and I do kill. But Jean is not afraid. I'm not afraid. You should be, he says. And she responds, helping him to stand up. I feel your pain, Wolverine, the anguish of body and spirit. I want to help. So does Professor Xavier. Otherwise, why bring you here? I'm glad I met you. Welcome to the X-Men. So Jean has got a good heart. She's also got a dark side too. And that will play out in the coming decade. And then it's dawn already, and the professor's worked through the night. Too much to do, too little time, he thinks. And Jean arrives, having had a change of clothes. The others being drowned in Storm's monsoon. She didn't get a wink of sleep. The professor says, I monitored your encounter with Wolverine. I'm very proud of the way you dealt with him and Warren. I know Wolverine has rough edges, says the professor. He may well prove the most difficult and dangerous student I've ever taught, but I believe the reward worth the risk. Given time and care, he's the potential to become a keystone of the team, and he does become that. And Jean replies, I'm glad, I really hope he works out, but I won't be here to watch. The conflict strikes so deeply, asked the professor. Oh, Professor, you've no idea. I thought the patterns of my life were all neatly, properly ordered, but one look from Wolverine has smashed them to bits. I love Scott with all my heart, she says, but I also can't deny the attraction between me and Wolverine. The longer we're together, the more afraid I am of yielding. But that's only part of how I feel, she says. I nearly died battling Krakoa, as I have on a score of occasions since you formed the X-Men, but tonight suddenly I found myself wondering why I keep coming back for more. Again, this is ironic in respect of what happens in X-Men, Uncanny X-Men issues 99 to 101, and of course 137. What of my own dreams and plans, she asks, for love, for a family? Must they be sacrificed on this terrible altar of responsibility, just like Cyclops has sacrificed his time with his girlfriend on the altar of responsibility? The professor says, Dear Jean, is that what you believe the X-Men's purpose is? Have I failed you so miserably? She exclaims, No, I don't know anymore anything. There's so much I want to see and do, a whole world to explore that knows nothing about mutants and aliens and supervillains lately. I find myself thinking of this house as a cloister, even a prison. I'm bound here, trapped. And of course, Jean, unlike Cyclops, she has powers she can control. Cyclops' optic blasts mean he'll always have to have the visor or ruby quartz lenses, and always afraid he'll lose control. Whereas Jean, with her power of telekinesis, her power of telekinesis is much more, and telepathy is much more capable of living unbeknownst to ordinary humans as a mutant. How can humanity come to trust us, Professor, she asks, though, if we forever hide behind these walls, afraid to discover if we can make it on our own? It can't, he replies. I never meant to keep you here, Jean, any of you. Much as I will miss you, all my students must follow the dictates of heart and conscience. And if that means leaving the X-Men and the school, so be it. Were I to deny that need, that honest choice, no matter how noble my reasons, I'd be no better than Magneto. And that was Chris Claremont's plan for the X-Men, that there would always be new mutants coming to be trained at the school or mentored by older X-Men, and X-Men themselves would retire and go live the kind of life that Jean is dreaming of. A life with love and a family of their own, and so on and so forth. And Claremont is writing here that that's Professor X's view. It's creatives and editors who always want the X-Men back in the mansion, back in the kind of the cradle of Stanley and Jack Kirby's X-Men, or Claremont and Burns X-Men, whether it's Jim Shooter or Bob Harris, or Jim Lee when he had creator control of the X-Men in 1991, 1992, always wanting them back. But Claremont, who treated the characters like people, wrote them as people who might want a life outside of the training room, the danger room, and so on and so forth. And then the story, First Night, concludes with the Professor embracing Jean. "I wish you well," he says. "There will always be a place. Should you ever need, don't hesitate." And she gets the last word. "Oh, hush, please hush. I'll always be only a thought away. Remember your own lessons, Professor. A moment like this should never be considered an ending, but a bright, new, wondrous beginning." And it was. Excellent. Really great stuff. Claremont returning to Giant Size X-Men #1. Getting rid of the whole fight Krakoa business and focusing in on character, keeping those 13 pages with the introductions to Nightcrawler and Storm and John Proudstar, Thunderbird, and making a lot then of the first night of those all new, all different X-Men in the house and how they were received by the original members, including Jean, Warren, Bobby, and Scott himself, who basically doesn't interact with them because he's still working on his after-action report. And of course, who's missing? Beast, because he was a member of the Avengers in this particular era. And there is the cover itself, reprinted there on the inside cover. And then on the back cover, we get a back cover by John Bolton. And it's that great scene of Wolverine there. And he's kind of snuck up behind Jean. And look at that. He's got what would you call it? A curl of her hair between his fingers, his hand on his hip. Yeah, he's making a play for her. And you can see that she's thinking about, she's got a little blush on her cheek as well. And here comes the knight in shining armor to protect her virtue from this little sneak here, Wolverine, this man, this natural man of hot blood and emotion. Really great stuff. It's almost like the Garden of Eden, like he's the snake in the Garden of Eden, and there's the tree, and this is Eve being tempted. Yeah, I get a sense of that about this back cover. I think it's fantastic. Really great work by Bolton. So there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary of Classic X-Men #1 from 1986. Did you pick this up at the time in 1986? What are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on the way that Claremont decided to jettison most of Giant Size X-Men #1 and just focus in on the introduction of the new X-Men and then the interactions of the old and the new on their first night altogether, 13 X-Men in the X-Mansion? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.